Media Mothership.
You're listening to Edge Radio here on 99.3 FM. This is Media Mothership, broadcasting out of Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. As always, we explore how media and popular culture can shape our understanding of the world around us. I'm your host, Craig Norris, joined today by guest Marcus Johnston.
Just Johnson, there's no...
Oh, no T? Well, that's why I didn't even put your mic.
Oh, whoa, hello. That's some feedback.
Really?
Yeah, only a little bit. I just made too much noise into the microphone.
Okay, all right.
It was actually at a good level. I'm just being over dramatic.
That's okay. It's 2024, so I feel like I'm learning how to do radio all over again now after a short break. So we're going to dive into some unusual and interesting media things which have happened over the last week or two, New Year's, Christmas period. We're going to start with the public domain. January 1st, of course, of each year is really exciting because the material that's being held under copyright suddenly gets pushed out into public domain. So this year, in January 1st, 2024, or from January 1st, 2024, works from 1928 are now open to everyone to use as they will, as well as sound recordings from 1923. Some of the highlights include D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover. You ever read that, Marcus?
I haven't, no.
Salacious text from the 1920s. Caused quite a lot of moral panic at the time. What else is it? Oh, yep, the German version of All Quiet on the Western Front. Not the English one. You have to wait a few more years for the English translation to go into public domain. Peter Pan, or The Boy Who Couldn't Grow Up. This is an unusual one because the story behind Peter Pan is that the author bequeathed it to the children's hospital in Britain, and then when it came up in the 70s to lose its copyright, they were given copyright in perpetuity in the UK. So in the UK, you'll always have to pay a licensing fee to use Peter Pan. But in the US now, and Australia follows the US, I think, for this as well, the 1911 novel. Oh no, that's been in public domain since 1967. Yes, one of them is Peter Pan and the Boy Who Couldn't Grow Up. Yeah, at least more of it's now in the public domain.
So yeah, that's the play script that is now in the public domain.
Hey, yeah, how's your acting going? Has this ever come up? Did you ever do Peter Pan in your acting career?
Yeah, I played a pirate 11 years ago at the Hobart Repertory Theatre production of it back in 2013.
Wow. Was it a memorable pilot? Was it one of the ones that people would know from, like, the Disney version?
Oh, goodness, no. I mean, the only pirates anyone actually knows are
Dr. Hook.
Captain Hook
Captain Hook.
Hook and Smee. They're the only two who actually... And if you're a mega fan, you might know Starkey, who's the third in command. But
did your pirate have a name?
Oh, Cookson, I think. Yeah, I was Cookson.
Okay.
Just a random pirate who only has, I think, he has 2 lines. The pirates generally only have 1 or 2 lines. And one of the lines that I did have ended up becoming a pantomime line that everyone yelled out all at the same time. I had no complaints with that. It was hilarious.
Do you remember the line?
I just remember everyone making the symbol of a hook with their fingers and pointing at Captain Hook and going, "Has he a hook, Captain?" And the director never even told us to make it a group line. It just happened very organically.
Emergent theatrical production play.
And I just thought, you know what, it's funnier this way, so I'm not going to complain.
What else is Agatha Christie's The Mystery of the Blue Train is in public domain. Any Agatha Christie experiences that you've had?
I'm about to alienate a lot of people here, but I really do not care for Agatha Christie.
I've only had the cinematic experience. Your You're not a fan of the actual books or the adaptions?
I find the adaptations tend to be very well. There's an inherent issue with adapting Agatha Christie to the stage, just because, as a general rule, the protagonist doesn't appear in the first act.
Really?
Yeah, because the first act in an Agatha Christie play is all about the murder happening, and the second and third acts are about Poirot or Marple or the sergeant, whatever his name is, or the captain actually solving the crimes. And then it's just sort of, and they also just meander a lot. It's it's essentially, it's like in a slasher movie when you spend the first 20 minutes getting to know a bunch of cardboard cutouts waiting for the killer to arrive.
Right.
In an Agatha Christie, you spend the first hour, or the first 45 minutes, watching a bunch of particularly uninteresting upper class toffs having first world problems and just sort of laying a whole bunch of red herrings for the actual meat of the play later on.
So what was your point? So in the first act, the antagonist doesn't appear.
The protagonist doesn't appear. The sleuth does not appear in the first act.
Oh, right, because they're just setting it up.
Yeah.
And then, right, yep. Yeah, the Glass Onion, and I think of Rian Johnson's
Knives Out.
Knives Out. Those ones have the Daniel Craig character coming in near the end of the first act.
So those are quite similar in the sense that Benoit Blanc he's the second main character of any film that he's in. He's never the main character, but he's always included in the narrative in some capacity from very close to the beginning. So you're always aware that he's there, but you're not sort of treading water waiting for him to rock up and start doing his thing.
Films. The big one, of course, the one that's getting a lot of media attention, is that Steamboat Willie is now in public domain. This is the silent version directed by Walt Disney, which, of course, is the first appearance of Mickey Mouse.
Well,
right?
He's actually a sociopath.
Mickey Mouse?
Yes.
What is a sociopath? It's someone who...
Someone who doesn't feel empathy for other people. I mean, it ends with... Mm-hmm. The short ends with him... smashing a bird into a river with a potato or something along the lines, and then laughing as it drowns.
Good for the kids. I mean,
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Get lots of laughter from the kids.
Well, I mean, the first Felix the Cat ends with him trigger warning, unaliving himself. They were real. The cartoons were really dark back then.
This is that kind of itchy and scratchy, lampooning of that style. I guess that. If you do look back at some of these early pre-war and wartime comics or cartoons, got Buster Keaton's The Cameraman. You've experienced much Buster Keaton in your time?
Not much Buster Keaton, but it's interesting to see that the passion of Joan of Arc is in there.
That's it, yes.
Do you know the story of how they recovered the full version of that movie?
No.
So, censors had it cut down significantly, and the original version was thought to be lost for decades until after Carl Theodor Dreyer passed away. And then they found a complete and unabridged version of the film in a supply closet in a Norwegian insane asylum.
Wow.
And it was silver nitrate film, so if they'd actually opened the canister then and there, it would have gone up in smoke.
Real? That's very lucky. Right. Wow. So that's amazing, because normally it seems like 9 times out of 10 it's just lost to history. These bits of cinema, and as you're saying, anyone that's seen Inglourious Bastards, the whole narrative of that ends up with the point that this... Because the film stock was made out of
silver nitrate,
which is incredibly flammable. Yeah, I had no idea. When do you remember when about this was?
It would have been rediscovered in the 60s or the 70s, I think.
What else is here that looks interesting? Well, The Man Who Laughs, as it points out here in the notes, it's featured a character who inspired the appearance of Joker in the Batman.
Yes, Conrad Veidt with a prosthetic smile, looking very evil.
I have seen stills of it, so I can now freely access the original black and white version on YouTube, probably somewhere. Yeah,
There's a lot of comedy in here. There's Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton.
yes. So it will be fun to see over the next few years as more of their canon of film comes out into the public sphere, where it might go. Because yes, we've got a couple of music compositions. This is just the written score that's now in the public domain. Animal Crackers. I don't know if I'd have to hear that one again. The original, when it was originally performed, it had the Marx Brothers. Mac the Knife, the German version though, so not the translated version.
Not the Bobby Darin version.
No. So you can now though get the musical score for the original German with German lyrics.
Das ist gut.
Das ist gut, ja. Making Whoopi.
Huh.
Right. I think some of this would probably come back. You could see some K-pop, some rap versions.
A K-pop version of Making Whoopi would be absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the song sounds like. It just has a hilarious title. Wolverine Blues. Could see that in the next Marvel movie. Look, if that doesn't make an appearance in Deadpool 3, I will be astounded.
Yeah, now that's in public domain, I'm sure they could just save a little bit of money there. So all that's in the public domain. What's interesting about this is, it took a long time, of course, for this to get into the public domain.
96 years.
And Disney, why I think Mickey Mouse has reached such interest is because, of course, Disney was one of the main companies which fought tooth and nail to ensure that their properties were always in copyright for as long as could be possible. So, because I know in the States it came up, in 76? Yeah, they point out that in 76 the Copyright Act was extended by 20 years, commonly referred to as the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act, and that was specifically associated with Disney lobbying to ensure that Mickey Mouse, Mickey and Minnie would stay in copyright further. So it's a case of everyone being very excited to see that Mickey Mouse is now in the public domain. And what's most fascinating about this is, of course, looking at how quickly adaptations have happened of these properties. Winnie the Pooh came into public domain last year, and we quickly got a horror movie on Winnie the Pooh, which was not well received. And of course now with Mickey Mouse, we have a Mickey Mouse appearing in a horror film called Infestation 88. What's interesting about Infestation 88 was suddenly all of the hoo-ha about the fact that it seems to be a neo-Nazi idea. I had no idea that the 88 number has an association with Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, a reference to David Eden Lane's 88 Precepts, an anti-Jew manifesto.
Right. So originally it was titled Infestations 88. The studio denied having a Nazi subtext, but they have retitled it Infestation Origins. So it's a bit icky, right? And also it's interesting that the first use of some of these properties is a horror film. Winnie the Pooh, and now Mickey Mouse. If we hear, do we want to hear the start of the trailer?
Well, you press play, so I think we're going to hear it one way or another.
Right. So it's very
Find the source.
Thought it was just rodents, but something
it's
else.
a bit Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah. Treat the infestation.
There's nests. They're everywhere. Tried to take care of it ourselves, but things have escalated. Exterminators are our last hope. Please, help us before...
This is a survival horror game.
Yeah, of course, I was saying it's a movie. I was wrong. It's a survival horror game, a la Five Nights at Freddy's.
Looks like this looks like Bug and being Resident Evil
Yeah.
or
yeah.
Dead Space, more like. Sorry.
So yeah, it'll be interesting if any of this goes any further. It'll be interesting to see how people use Mickey Mouse. It seems to be, very, very much, juxtaposing the Mickey Mouse. And again, this is only the Mickey Mouse imagery and iconicness that appeared in that first film. So it has to be, this was, I think, did he have white gloves yet? Right.
I think so. I think he doesn't have white gloves in Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, so in Steamboat Willie, it's black and white, so it can't be a color Mickey Mouse that you're portraying. It's I guess much more full contrast, like just black eyes, no gloves, pants though, and shoes. So yeah, again, it'll be. It's interesting. Some people are saying that because this Mickey Mouse is very much the kind of beta Mickey Mouse, that some kids won't recognize it as Mickey Mouse. I think you will, regardless of it being the first version of it. The ears, the kind of goofy eyes and expression. Yeah. So, of course, what Disney have done is they've trademarked Mickey Mouse, and people have pointed out that cleverly Disney has put at the start of their, Disney Blu-rays, DVDs, and so forth, a short Steamboat Willie in their products, in their kind of, produced by Disney title card at the start. You'll see a short snippet of Steamboat Willie, and that's to ensure it falls under a trademark law. So I'm sure if Disney wants, they could enforce that. So I think you can't merchandise from this, I think, is what a trademark, like ensuring that it's still under trademark, that the Mickey Mouse image has been trademarked, means that people can't just create merchandise from a trademark that's similar. I am not a lawyer, so don't take any legal advice from me. Infestation 88. One other story that just came today that I wanted to play, because I know Marcus is a huge video game player. Did you hear about this? The British, the Tetris whiz that beat Tetris, firstly.
Yeah, I did hear about that. I didn't know it was supposed to beat Tetris.
You didn't? Yeah, neither did I. I mean, it's interesting because they've defined beating Tetris as he's got the highest score ever, but that high score also caused the game system to crash. That he was playing it on the NES, and he scored such a large score that it caused it to crash. I mean, we'll show a short clip, and what's interesting about this clip is that it also caused the comments of the Sky News presenter in the UK caused a kind of mini backlash from video game fans.
Now, Tetris has long been touted as a video game that just can't be beaten because it just goes on and on. Now, Tetris has long been touted as a video game that just can't be beaten. Oh my God! Well, 13-year-old American Willis Gibson has technically proven that wrong. He beat the original Nintendo version of the game by reaching such a high level that the coding froze. That left the program unable to generate any more falling blocks. As a mother, I would just say step away from the screen, go outside, get some fresh air. Beating Tetris is not a life goal. Speaking of fresh air, let's get a look at the...
All right, yeah. Reactions?
To the kid who finished it, or to her comments?
Let's start with, the real scandal's been the comments, of course. British TV host tells teenage Tetris whiz to go outside. And Kotaku's run a little article talking about how, it then unleashed a fury on Twitter of people saying, hypocrisy. No one says this to people who binge Netflix. What's this comment? It's the year of our Lord 2024, and Sky News is still telling people who play video games to go outside and get some fresh air. Notably, on the same day, they're praising the 16-year-old darts player. This was the youngest ever darts champion, who probably is, of course, someone that's not outside is playing that. So it is this kind of groan at having a media panic around Sky News. I think it is a real concern in terms of, there's a lot of moral or media panic messaging around blue light, kids spending too long on screens. So it's certainly part of the zeitgeist. I wouldn't say this is a kind of groan. I don't believe it's 2024. We've still got this. I'd say this is very much the conversation today about, screen time. More generally, it's interesting though that the video gamers are saying, yeah. But what's your reaction to the kid that won Tetris? Is that winning it when the game code crashes?
Oh, that is absolutely winning it. I mean, if the game is no longer presenting a challenge for you to overcome, then
in terms of it's actually crashed,
yeah,
like you've been winning it,
yeah,
and it's almost like the game flipped the table at that point. Like you're playing with like you've upset your competitor, the program, so much that it's flipped the table. That is, it's literally collapsed its code.
And and he got the maximum score possible. If you can't get a higher score and the game is stopped, then that's absolutely finishing the game.
And it's an adorable scene. If you've not seen it, you can check it out. The kid being completely overtaken by the emotions of recognizing that he's got the highest score ever, and then the game has frozen.
And that'd be a world record. I mean, if anyone's finished Tetris before on the Nintendo Entertainment System, they certainly haven't done it on a live stream like this kid has. They don't have the evidence to back it up.
That's right. Yeah. So he live streamed it, which is really fascinating because that's what interested me. That they've got live stream footage of him playing. So clearly he must have a channel. It's not mentioned here. I imagine he has some kind of like Twitch channel or something, and people have just been watching him for like the day as he's been sitting there just. Yep.
In terms of the comments, though, that's just. Would you expect anything else from Sky News? Let's be honest.
No. All right. Now, one of the things I've loved about doing this show is where it's overlapped with like the start of the year, and then you find out all the films that are set this year. So last year was Soylent Green. 2023 was when Soylent Green was set, the Charlton Heston 1970s sci-fi dystopia. There's a short article I want to point out talking about how 2024 is going to be one hell of a year in Star Trek history. The article from Gizmodo talks about this in two ways. One, that we're going to get a lot of Star Trek on our screens. Final season of Discovery, Michelle Yeoh's Section 31 film in the Star Trek universe, the Strange New Worlds TV series still going on, Prodigy and Lower Decks, which I think are both cartoon projects. Lower Decks are still continuing. But then they're pointing out how in Star Trek timeline, 2024 is a really important year. And it's an important year because are you a Star Trek fan, Marcus?
No, I'm sorry.
All right, this will test you a bit.
Asking the wrong person.
You're somewhat familiar with it, though, right?
No.
Really? Great. So you can tell me if this at all is interesting. Data, one of the big characters in Next Generation, points out that in 2024 we have Irish reunification.
Ooh.
So this is where the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland bring an end to their century of violence and British influence to become a united nation in 2024. Article points out that we're probably closer to getting Scottish independence than we are getting United Ireland in 2024. However, a lot of episodes talk about this as the year that basically after the Irish reunification, you have these political, civil protests and battles between the neo-Trotskyites.
Neo-Trotskyists.
Yeah, neo-Trotskyists. And Gaullists, who are fighting in as Europe goes into turmoil because of political and environmental upheaval. Season 2 of Picard is set this year. So this was a series which aired on Disney or whatever it was last year. But then there's Riots in the US. That's depicted in Deep Space Nine. So the Star Trek Deep Space Nine has a kind of travel back in time to 2024. And they go to San Francisco in these riots that are happening. But the big one is World War III happens this year.
Oh.
I know, bugger. So, yeah, Star Trek points out that in 2024, Earth goes through World War III. So it's a huge turning point in Star Trek timeline because basically, yeah, things get really bad for Earth, but then, yeah, interstellar travel happens just around the corner. In 2063, we've got a couple more years to get to before the Vulcans arrive on Earth. But in 2063, the Vulcans arrive, and we get, you know, our space program gets recognized by the Vulcans.
Wasn't was First Contact set in 2063?
Hey, yeah.
I always thought First Contact because I've seen First Contact. I saw that when I was a kid. That's the only Star Trek thing that I've seen.
It's not a bad one to watch. Yeah, it's good. The Borg are in it.
The Borg Queen, who absolutely terrified me when I was 10.
It's a great new villain for the franchise at that time. 2063. Yeah, look, I mean, I guess the Earth had regressed a lot, so it didn't look super evolved.
Because I remember watching it and thinking it was set in the present day. Because I just remember it looking very sort of like late 90s, probably because it was made in the late 90s.
Yeah, I think that reflects the fact that Earth went backwards a lot after World War III. But yeah, it's I might be wrong. Do send a comment on our Twitch chat or YouTube chat or SMS now on 048888111707 if it is a different year. But it says here in the article 2063 is when the Vulcans get here. There we go. So World War III. So let's hope that that's not true.
I mean, one of my students last year was they were asking why we were studying World War I at the very end of the year after reports on it. I said because you're going to be studying World War II next year, and you can't understand World War II without understanding the end of World War I. And one student said, "Oh, we could be studying World War III next year," and I said, "Nah, there's not enough time to get it into the syllabus."
There you go. See that? Deflected. Not ruining the hope for our kids. Another video game story from Ars Technica. One of Tekken 8's colourblind modes is causing migraines, vertigo, and debate. Now, this is only in kind of beta demo mode at the moment, but it's interesting to check out on YouTube, Tekken 8 colourblind mode, because what they've done is they've created this kind of like solarized version of the game, and or high contrast solarized, so everything's kind of outlined, black outlines. For those people that haven't played Tekken, of course, it's a 1v1? 1v1 fighting game, karate style, martial arts moves. So what's really interesting about this, though, is that they've kept the outline of the animations for your characters, but they've removed all of the character features, so all you're left with is horizontal black and white stripes for one character, and vertical black and white stripes for the other character. It's quite migraine-inducing for me when I've seen it.
Yeah, the background looks like the music video for Take On Me. And
there you go. Yeah,
I kind of wish the player characters did as well, rather than just being stripes.
It would help with differentiating, though, right? I can see what they've gone for here, that they've created high contrast visual accessibility.
Ultimately, like characters in Tekken, they even taking out colors, they look very different from each other. So
how much of a problem would it be for colorblindness? I don't know.
I mean, ultimately, if you have characters who look similar, like Kazuya and Jin, just put them in different outfits, and their clothes will be different enough that you can tell them apart more easly. Mind you, I've never had to deal with color blindness myself, so perhaps this is going to be particularly useful. But I don't know. I can't.
It doesn't
I
seem
can't.
like it's getting much positive.
No.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Hold on. Let me. So here we go.
I don't know who I am anymore.
Someone tell me what the hell is going on here?
All right. So this is Doctor Who. It has now returned and is returned. So I've not seen it. Marcus has seen the whole clutch of Doctor Who that got released over like Christmas, New Year's. So what was that? That was the Davros special.
Yes, that was the sketch
Christmas
for
special.
Children in Need. So yeah, there was the Children in Need sketch with Davros and the creation of the Dalek Plunger. Then there were 3 one-hour specials with David Tennant as the 14th Doctor in New Incarnation. And then there was one final 1-hour special with Ncuti Gatwa as the new Doctor, the 15th Doctor.
Yeah, so we had a whole bunch of like headline-grabbing Doctor Who content from here we go, Doctor Who's top 50 controversies. We might go back to that.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, we'll read through that in a sec. What do I want to jump into? Okay, mainly it seems to have caused a little bit of backlash from 144 people. It's more, but anyway, the BBC has responded to anti-trans Doctor Who complaints. So these are people who watched this series, and particularly, I guess, what we're looking at here is the David Tennant episodes with Starbeast episodes where there's a trans character, and some fans have reacted against that, saying it's anti heterosexual male, right? I think was part of the complaint, because there's a couple of scenes. There's one scene where the Doctor is corrected from using assuming a male pronoun for the alien, and he's corrected by saying, you're assuming it's male, it could be female. And some fans said that's too woke, that's not needed. And the other one was right at the end, spoilers here, where the resolution of the episode comes about from the non-binariness of the main character, and there's dialogue that really doesn't understand what's going on or how to finish it, because he's a man and you need to be non-binary. Is that right?
Look, more or less. I say it's a pretty fair assessment. There's a line from Donna and Donna's daughter, who is a trans woman. Something along the lines of, you're a male presenting Time Lord, so you wouldn't know.
And what's interesting here is the some of the debate around, I guess, the presentation of diversity. So the BBC's come out and has said that what is it? So there are newspapers of absolute hate and venom and destruction and violence who would rather see that sort of thing wiped off the screen, destroyed. Shame on you and good luck in your life. So the BBC has come out in full support of the Doctor Who. Here it is. So here's their quote here, saying, "As regular viewers of Doctor Who will be aware, the show has and will always continue to proudly celebrate diversity and reflect the world we live in. We are always mindful of the content within our episodes." So yeah, they're embracing the idea of trans identity in this episode. Key plot points are based around trans identity. There's also, I guess, within that a lot of wearing the politics on the sleeve with the idea of disability. So the Davros episode took Davros out of a wheelchair, and I think Russell T Davies in an interview I heard was talking about how, one of the things he wanted to update was the idea that the evil bad character in Doctor Who was in a wheelchair, Davros, right? Like, why is that? So their version of Davros is non-wheelchair based. And instead, we do have a wheelchair character who is heroic, who's a unit member, scientist.
Yes, someone who sits behind a computer and delivers technobabble.
So how have you unpacked? I mean, did you enjoy these this Doctor Who? I've not seen them. Would you say definitely jump into them? It's looking really exciting and interesting, or would you say actually without the controversy, it's pretty boring? Or
I would absolutely recommend people watch these specials. I thought they were pretty good. I actually think that the specials it's more of a model I think that Doctor Who should transition into. Just because one of the major problems sorry, this is a tangent, but one of the major problems Doctor Who has always had, dating back to the 60s, is that every series, every story is written by someone different, so there's very little consistency in tone and characterization. I think if they were to do between 4 and 6 specials a year rather than doing 10 or 13 episodes, that would be a better model, because it would mean that they could all be written by the same person. And but I enjoy them. To cover the Davros one, because we had a bit of a discussion before the show about this, and how, because Russell T Davies, or for anyone who's not aware, Davros is the creator of the Daleks, and he goes around in sort of one of those skirts like they wear, and he's blind, his eyes are fused together, and he's got a really big blue light in his forehead, which is clearly meant to be his eye, and he's only got one working hand. And Davies said he thought it was problematic, saying that all people in wheelchairs could be evil. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing horribly there. I'm probably really undercutting what his actual point was. But
yeah, I think it was to provide alternative imagery of people in wheelchairs that it doesn't just treat them as villains.
I mean, for me, it was always more so about it's creating a strong visual connection between Davros and his creations.
The Daleks.
Because he thinks the Daleks are perfection, and it would make sense that he built them in his own image. They have one eye, they only have one hand they can use to manipulate things, and they go around in those hover skirts. Because he's so so monomaniacal and arrogant, he designed them after himself. And it's always people are because there was a virus or a disease that was attacking the Khaleds, his race, and so he accelerated the mutation to create the Daleks. And there are expanded universe stories that show Davros being in some horrible accident that scars him and removes the use of one of his arms and his legs. I never thought that was necessary, because I always just thought that Davros is this withered, shrunken guy because he was in an advanced stage of the disease.
Yeah, right.
So to have him just become a normal guy, it doesn't make sense that he would design the Daleks that way. It was a funny short, because it was a Children in Need short. It had a punchline at the end. But the conversation, Craig, that you and I were having is we were talking about the character of Khan from Star Trek, who, when they made Star Trek Into Darkness in the early 2010s, a character who's originally a Sikh, who's portrayed as a terrorist, they went, oh, hold on, that's actually really problematic. We don't want to be saying that all Sikhs are terrorists. So they changed a character called Khan Noonien Singh into a white guy played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And the Sikh response was, no, we really liked Khan. He's one of the most famous Sikh characters in Western fiction. And yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's really charismatic, and he's always getting one up on the heroes. He's a really interesting character. And yeah, he wasn't a good guy, but he was a compelling villain, and you've taken that away from us.
Look, and I think that's interesting that, the idea that there's only one way of reading, Davros or the character of Khan in Star Trek is really problematic, that there's never one only reading. Yes, there might be semiotic theory, you would say there's a dominant reading of that, and sometimes that can be quite racist and exclusionary. However, there's equally going to be resistant readings, which will read a queer subtext into that character, or a aspirational, positive, feminist reading, or in this case with Singh, the original actor that played him.
He wasn't even Sikh; he was Mexican.
It was Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah, Ricardo Montalbano.
Montana, yeah. So, highly problematic in terms of you wouldn't have that version today, or would you, right? I mean, because, they got the whitest guy out, Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch,
to play a character still named Carl Noonien sing. So yeah, I mean, I think again, it could be treating your audience as dumb or stupider than they are. That actually your audiences can be quite subversive in their readings. It can be fun to have a text which you then dig into to, as an audience member, have an alternative reading of.
See, I'm not someone who uses a wheelchair, so I can't really speak from that perspective. But I would imagine, because the way that they've handled this is if you take away one of the Doctor's most iconic and effective and recurring adversaries, if you take him out of a wheelchair and bring in a supporting character who really doesn't do that much to be your representation of characters in a wheelchair, I would be interested to know if they feel shortchanged that they've lost such an iconic recurring villain who is a massive genius and who does have a very interesting character arc throughout at least the original Genesis of the Daleks. But I'd be fascinated to know what the response is about that representation being taken away and then the positive representation being brought in as a replacement, but without, I suppose, the effectiveness. But in response to this, sorry, you go.
Yeah, because I liked one of the ideas you had earlier around the idea that Doctor Who has always been controversial. That in fact this kind of fan reaction to Doctor Who, saying that you're ruining Doctor Who, you're introducing woke, progressive politics that don't belong in Doctor Who. They could be done differently. It misses the fact that Doctor Who's always been controversial. It's always had aspects. It's
always been woke. I mean, the fact that his greatest enemies are fascists and authoritarians, whereas he's very much or they or she, depending on what the incarnation is very much an anti-authoritarian figure, has aligned themselves with communist ideals in the 1970s when discussing with the Silurians, has always butted heads with very staunch conservative figureheads. And you look at some of the classic stories, and they could certainly be seen as problematic today because it was a very different time in, social development and social norms. But if you compare it with the competition in the 1960s and 70s, they were, in a lot of ways, very progressive. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that Barbara, one of the first ever companions, achieved. One of the most... I'm trying to not say the word where it's bad and it rhymes with grass. But one of the most effective women on 1960s television. I mean, she ran a Dalek over with a truck. How awesome's that? And in the 1980s, when there was widespread homophobia from the AIDS crisis, you had characters like, and there was one Dalek story where a bunch of people were being forcibly converted into Daleks, which is a pretty obvious analogy, and the Doctor is extremely sympathetic towards them. And there's one scene where he full-on nurses a dying mutant who's been infected with what is totally not AIDS. And when they address homophobia there's one episode where the TARDIS gets painted pink, and there's always been a woke element to Doctor Who. It's nothing new.
It's interesting, yeah, because 10 years ago, this article came out from Den of Geek back in 2013, Doctor Who's top 50 controversies. We don't have much time. You might skip to the top 10.
Can I just see, 49 was William Hartnell. I'm just curious to see how William, because here's the original, Doctor.
So number 49 controversy is William Hartnell. On top of the notorious Billy Fluffs, where Hartnell would mangle his lines due to a combination of intense production schedules, illness, and a deliberate character trait, Hartnell was a difficult man. He had his favourites amongst the guest actors and wanted things to be just so. His attitudes to race and religion have also been remarked on by Nicholas Courtney and Anique Wills, who attributed anti-Semitic and racist comments to Hartnell respectively. Yet actors from those backgrounds spoke of getting on well with the actor. The issue will most likely remain inexactly detailed, a complex and unedifying blight. Right, so it seems to be about the actor himself being anti-Semitic and racist. Is that something you're familiar with? Or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a scene where... There's a scene in late William Hartnell when he was he had undiagnosed arteriolariosis, which affected his ability to remember his lines, and so he'd sort of slip in and out of reality. And there's one very famous instance where they walk into a film set which is set it's doing a film that's got very Orientalist overtones. It's a film within the show, and at the end of the scene, the Doctor says, "Get me out of here! It's a madhouse. It's full of Arabs," and people are not actually sure if that was scripted or if it was just William Hartnell forgetting where he was and saying something really racist.
Right. Yeah. So again, controversial in terms of the lead actor being racist, yet portraying a kind of, as you're saying, an anti-establishment figure. Even the Hartnell First Doctor has anti-establishment to him, and certainly been retconned as an anti-establishment figure. I mean, we're talking of retcon, of course, the many fans bemoaning the retconning of the origins of the Doctor.
Oh, we've talked about that enough.
Number 48, controversy, regeneration. Right? So they explained that the controversy around regeneration was that, we wouldn't really be discussing this show's 50th anniversary yet. In 1966, the first regeneration did not go swimmingly. BBC archives show a generally negative reaction to the second Doctor. Most of the comments centered around Patrick Troughton as Doctor Who. Much of this took critical form. Though there is some positive comment in the report, the words idiotic new character, playing for laughs, and his character is peculiar in an unappealing way are amongst choice criticisms. My personal favourite is, I feel the character is over-exaggerated, whimsical even. So this was the BBC's reaction to the direction the Doctor Who production team was taking the series in with the regeneration idea and casting Patrick Troughton.
And this just shows that people have always, every time a new Doctor comes along, even with
Right.
the second Doctor ever, the very first generation, people have always complained about them. And Patrick Troughton is now seen widely as the incarnation and the actor who defined what the Doctor should be. Every other Doctor except the third, and maybe the 12th, is more influenced by Patrick Troughton than they are by William Hartnell.
Many people would see the Tom Baker role as, I guess, the one as an audience member they fondly look back on. But you're saying is this from people that played the Doctor, the role of the Doctor? Or?
So most of the later Doctors took influence from Troughton.
Because his take was very different, certainly from William Hartnell.
Yes. The whole sort of, because William Hartnell was basically just a grumpy old man drifting through time and space. Patrick Troughton played it as someone who will deliberately act silly to distract his enemies, and will sort of never reveal his hand until the last possible moment. And because because William Hartnell was, I believe he was ex-military, or he certainly played a lot of military characters. He was built like granite, and Patrick Troughton was not. And he would deliberately play to the fact that the Doctor's not someone who can generally overcome someone physically. He's got to outwit his opponents to save the day. And even Tom Baker has said that he watched a couple of Patrick Troughton serials back in the day and took some influence from him. People remember Baker for the costume and the mannerisms and the voice and the character trademarks, but the actual, I guess, the essence of what we assume the character to be in terms of motivation and approach to problem solving is very much took root in Patrick Troughton. But no, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Matt Smith all very deliberately emulated.
How did Troughton end his run? Was it considered a kind of mutually beneficial end? Did he want to leave? Was it controversial? He
enjoyed the show, but he was also, because he had a large family and he enjoyed having consistent work. But he was a character actor and he didn't want to become too familiar.
Right.
He left after 3 years exactly because he did not want to become typecast. And he's advised other actors to do that as well. So it's actually called the Troughton Rule, where a Doctor will do 3 seasons or 3 complete series, and then they will depart.
And if you stay longer, you will get typecast.
Absolutely.
Tom Baker stayed longer. He's very typecast.
He played the Doctor for 7 years, and his mental health and his ability to distinguish reality from fiction was not great, and so he ended up doing a huge number on his personal life towards the end of his tenure, and it really affected his ability to get work in the 1980s.
He should have followed the Troughton Rule. If he had, what would 3 seasons of Tom Baker been? That would have ended with the... It
would have ended on a high, because his first 3 seasons are his best. It becomes a bit lighter and fluffier and a bit tackier after his third season because they.
So Fang Rock, is that the kind of horror stuff? Is that?
I think Horror Fang Rock it's a horror serial from later in his tenure, but they basically replaced the head writer and the head producer
Right.
after Tom Baker's third season because they were getting a lot of complaints from parents that it was too dark, and so. He sort of goes through 3 eras. There's the first 3 seasons, the next 3 seasons, and then the last season. They've all got different production teams, and they all feel very different
Really?
tonally.
Wow. All right. Wow. So the Troughton Rule, 3 seasons. Well, we're pretty much at time. We'll have to bring you back to do the 47 because we've got the Pratt to Troughton Affairs.
Oh, wow.
I know. And as you say, it's probably worth going through these just to unpack the repetitive nature of the debate today. That the debate we're heading in, the idea that Doctor Who's going to be cancelled or is being cancelled by a group of fans, that, oh my God, there's no recovery from it. You put a historical lens on this, and Doctor Who has a history of
Even with New Who, it's been going downhill and in danger of being cancelled ever since David Tennant came in. When everyone loved Christopher Eccleston during his 1 season at the start of New Who, everyone said he was the best Doctor ever, and they were upset when he regenerated and thought David Tennant was going to be nowhere near as good.
One last thing on that then is Christopher Eccleston's. It's been a lot of media coverage of his answer to a kid's question about if he'd ever come back to play Doctor, and he said, he'd only come back if Russell T Davies wasn't involved or something.
Yep.
Right, yeah, so very toxic, it seems, that kind of end. And his famously never spoken about it, but seems to have now said more about it than before.
To make a complex story very short, essentially Eccleston felt that he wasn't treated well by Davies on set. He felt that Davies blacklisted him from getting more work, which is the reason why he's come back to do the Big Finish audio dramas and new conventions, because he's got to provide for his family, and he'd be open to coming back because he did enjoy playing the Doctor, but he didn't enjoy working with Russell T Davies.
Wow. But Russell T Davies is back now.
Yes.
I'm going. Oh, well, not. That may be good. Maybe who knows? All right. Well, that's been Media Mothership for another week. Tune in next week. More exciting media stuff. Keep listening to Edge Radio. Coming up next is music. Then Can't Sit Down with Adrian.
Edge Radio, on air since 2003.
In 2023, Edge Radio turns 20. Join the party. edgeradio.org.au.